Welcome everyone to my channel. I'm Andrea, and here we talk only about automated trading. If you like what I do and enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on the videos. When we reach 1,000 subscribers, I'll start a live stream where I'll show you 24/7 how my account works. This way, you'll be able to see, and if you want, even copy all the trades I make. In this new video, I'll show you how to add indicators that we will then use to create our expert advisor in the code. So this is the code we created last time where there's still nothing in it. Now let's see how to add the indicators. We can also delete this part with the comments. Here we are. I've added a section of code and now I'm going to explain everything to you. I did it without showing you so we wouldn't waste too much time. Anyway, let's go through it line by line to see what we've added. In this example, I've specifically added a moving average and the RSI indicator, which are common tools in technical analysis. So first of all, we essentially need to set the inputs, which are the crucial initial parameters we'll provide to our expert advisor. You can create a group where we insert the inputs related, for example, to the moving average. And to do this, you actually write input group. So we create the group and then you put the two curly braces at the top and write inside whatever we want, as if it were a comment. Then we decide, for the moving average in this case, we need to choose the time frame. So in the first line, we define the time frame. How do we do that? We use input enum time frames. This is a fixed command. This part here, we define ourselves. We can name it however we like. In this case, I called it time frame of the moving average. Then we set the period, meaning our time frame. In this case, 1 hour. If we want to change it, instead of 1 hour, we can use all these others. 1 minute, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. It gives you the list up to here. So you can use these, which are the minute-based ones. Then we have the hour-based ones. 4 hours, 8 hours, daily, 1 day, weekly, 1 week, and so on. So in this case, we'll leave it as H1. After the semicolon, we can add a comment. This will be the text that we see inside our expert in MetaTrader. The second parameter we need to give the moving average is the period. So our period. To do this, we use input. Then we decide on the variable we need to use, in this case an integer. Because the moving average period is an integer, it's a number. For example, I set it to 200, it could be 187, but it can't be 185.2 because it has to be a whole number. Another input we give to the moving average. The third one is the method, so the type of average. Here, as always, we need to use enum, but my method, written like this. This is the variable we are creating ourselves, and we can name it however we like. You can call it whatever you prefer. I called it my method to remind myself that it's the method I'm using for this moving average. And here I have the input, the type of average, which will be the first thing I see in my expert advisor. In this case, I set it to ESMA, but we can change it. We can set it to EMA, an exponential moving average, or whatever you need. Let's set it to EMA. We'll leave it like this. After all, this is just a test. Next, we have all the inputs needed to use the RSI. So the first one is again the time frame, just like before. So let's go ahead and name it. In this case, I called it RSI time frame, so it's clear that it refers to the RSI. Let's set it to H1. The RSI periods, just like before, we have the input again, and again it's an integer because the periods are always whole numbers. We name it as we like and enter our number. Then after the semicolon, we add the comment that we will later read in MetaTrader. I'll show you in MetaTrader how the expert appears. We have the price to which we apply the RSI. So here as well, input and num applied price are the name of our variable. Here we specify. In this case, I apply it to the close price. Then I've also added two other values that I might need in the expert, which are again two integer values, so input and inti. The trigger for making a sell. For example, I might want to sell when the RSI is greater than 70, so if I save 70 in this variable, or buy if it's below 30. These values that I set as input will also be values I can use during future optimization, because I'll be able to change them. Everything that is set as input can be changed. Everything that is written in the code is fixed and cannot be changed. Let's move on now. So to use indicators in the expert, I need to have the handles. Handles are integers. They are two integer variables. I usually always name them handle followed by the type of indicator I'm going to use. So I created a handle for the moving average and a handle for the RSI. The handles need to be initialized in the onInit function. So in onInit, I set up my two handles. Let's start with the one for the moving average. In the case of the main indicators in MetaTrader, there are already these functions that have been created. If you want to use a specific indicator or one you've created or downloaded that isn't available by default in MetaTrader's functions, instead of IME, you use iCustom. So in this case, if I wanted to use it, I would have to put here iCustom, and inside it will then ask me for a whole series of parameters that I need to provide based on the indicator I'm using. In this case, we have the moving average. We use it. You see, for example, there's also the MACD and various other indicators. What do we need to pass to this function? The first is the symbol. So the symbol is where we use the expert. And if you want to take it automatically, you use _symbol. If in certain cases you want to use another symbol, you need to specify the symbol you are using. For example, I might want to trade on EUR USD using the moving average from GBP USD. So here I would enter GBP USD if I want to use that moving average. In my case, I usually always use the moving average that refers to what I'm using, where I've placed the expert on the expert's chart. The second is the time frame variable that we defined in the input. So here I just enter the name I defined earlier. Then I have the periods, so it's the same thing. This is the shift, and in my case, I want to use all the values. I don't want to shift by... It tells us by how many candles I'm going to shift. I don't want to shift, so I set it to 0, so that I start aligned with the candles. The method, so my method, which I also defined in the input. And the last one is the price to which we apply the average. I usually always apply moving averages to the close, so I didn't include this parameter in the input because it's not something I usually change. If you want to add it, you need to do the same thing we did here for the RSI. Add a line here in the input, define this price variable, and choose what you want to apply it to so that if you do an optimization, you can also vary this parameter if you want. We do the same thing for the RSI. We define the handle for the RSI with IRSI, symbol, RSI timeframe, RSI periods, and the price to which I apply it, because in this case, maybe I need to change it. So I need to provide this value in the input. Obviously, at the end of each line, we always have semicolons, otherwise it won't work. And in the onInit, we're done. We've defined the handles. We don't need to add anything else. Now let's move on to the onTick function. In onTick, we need to define two arrays without specifying their size, so we leave this space blank. To define the arrays, we need to specify their type. They are doubles, because all the numbers with decimals that we read from the indicators are of type double. We can name them as we like. I called them RSI1 and MA to indicate the RSI and the moving average. Two empty square brackets, because I don't know how many values I'll want to store in them, so I leave it empty, and a semicolon. After I've defined the two arrays where I'll store the numbers related to the indicators, so the indicator values, I use the copy buffer function. What do I need to pass to copy buffer? I need to pass the handle. Thank you. So we have the handle for the RSI, the handle for the MA, and then I decide which value to save from the RSI. In this case, the RSI has only one value as an indicator, so I put the main line, or I could also put a 1 here. In some cases, when I have an indicator with 2, 3, 4, or 5 parameters, maybe I don't need all of them. For example, I'm thinking of Bollinger Bands, which already have two values, the lower band and the upper band. In my copy buffer, I pick one band, so I say value 1 because it's the first band. If I want the other band, maybe I say value 2. If I have an indicator with 3 lines, I also say value 3 if I need it, or I don't save it. It depends on what I need. After that, I have this one. This tells me that I start one candle back from the last one to save the values, because in this case, I'm not interested in saving the value of the RSI and the candle that's currently forming. I want to know the RSI of closed candles because that's usually how it's done. If, on the other hand, you want to save the value of the candle that's still forming, you should set this to 0. What does this 2 represent? This 2 represents the number of RSI values we want to save. If I set it to 2, I will save 2 values, meaning the last closed candle and the previous candle. If I set it to 10, I will save 10 candles, so I will have 10 values in the array with all 10 candles, starting from the one that is information 10 candles back. RSI. This tells us where we are going to save the values. By using RSI, we are saving them in this array that we created here. The same goes for the moving average. So we have the handle for the average, the main line, because the average is also a single value, 1, so we don't take the last information candle. In this case, for example, I set it to 3 values because I want to save 3 values of the average in the array where I saved them. So that's it. Now I've added this command, which for now is commented out with 2 slashes, so it won't be executed. I'll show you later what happens. And then I added a comment. What is this comment for? This comment command allows you to display a series of values on the chart if you want to see what you're doing. So in our case, I've included the value of RSI 0, the value of RSI 1, and the values of the 3 moving averages. Basically everything we're saving in the arrays so we can check what numbers we're actually storing. That way we'll see it on the chart. Now let's take a look at the chart. Let's open our MetaTrader so we select the expert test. Right now I've set it to Bitcoin, but it doesn't really matter. We'll pick a time period, enable visual mode so we can see what's happening, and then click start. This way we'll run our test and check what we've programmed. Here we are, let's pause it. So we've loaded the moving average. Okay, everything's working. We've loaded the moving average. It's this red line, so that means our code is working. At the bottom, we've also loaded the RSI, so it's showing up here as well, which means it's working. We're on the H1 chart because we set everything to H1. Here at the top, in this section, you can see the various values that we included in that comment. So we have the RSI, the first value of the array, the second, and the 3 values of the moving averages. So let's check if they're correct, if we did everything right. How do we do that? So let's take the previous candle because we always work with that, and this will be the value we need to have. The moving average is 57,362.82, and that's this value here, the MA2 number. The candle before that is 57,376.539. Here it is, 539. Then there are some extra values because all the values are being saved. And the one before that is 57,387.32. And here's the same value, 57,387.327, which is what we see there. So number 0, the way we've programmed it, is always the most distant candle. So it starts at 0, 1, 2. So going forward, the last one is the one with the highest value. The same thing happens for the RSI values. So we have RSI 0, which is 66.23, which would be this one here. 66.24 because it gets rounded. And then we have the other RSI, 59.94. And here too, RSI 1 is the one closest to the candle that is forming. RSI 0 is the previous one. If you don't like this way of saving the data in reverse, so to speak, but it's really just a matter of habit, you can go into the code and add this array, this command, ArraySetAsSeries, but set to true. So you need to specify the array you want to modify and then set it to true. What happens if we enter this command? Now let's compile and take a look at our values. So we've applied it to the average. Let's run the test again to see the values. Let's move forward a bit as well. Okay, let's stop here. What happened? The average now has the value 2.5708. Let's see where 5,708 is. 5,708,751, which is this one here. So we have the value 2, which has become the most distant, and the value 0, which is the last candle, this one here, as you can see. So with this command, we've reversed the vector. We have the data with the largest number being those that are temporarily furthest from the current candle. This is something you have to decide for yourselves depending on how you like to program. I usually don't use the RSI because I already know the numbers anyway. One useful thing when you start creating the expert is to always put a comment with 2 or 3 values from the vector so you can understand what you're saving and remember it when you go to program so you don't make mistakes. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I'll start a 24/7 live stream with my account. You'll be able to see everything I do and even copy it if you want. In the next video, I'll show you how to insert the magic number of an expert advisor.